Welcome to Anderson School District 4 Local Education Agency Training, or LEA Training. Today we're going to talk about a few different things for LEAs to make sure that everybody understands what their role is when sitting in meetings as the local LEA. The first thing I want to talk about is when we're talking about students with disabilities, we need to get into the routine of using people-first language. The language of society shapes its beliefs, ideas, and culture. So it's important to be sensitive to the feelings and reactions of parents and students when discussing disability. Using people-first language is a way to recognize the student first and the disability as a component or aspect of the student's personality. It eliminates generalizations and stereotypes by focusing on the person rather than the disability. So we want to say Sally is a student with a disability instead of disabled student. Sally is a student with autism instead of autistic student. Sally is a student with an intellectual disability instead of mental retardation. Those are examples, but the student always comes first before the disability. Let's talk a little bit about what an LEA is and what it actually stands for. So it's a public board of education or other public authority legally constituted within a state for either administrative control or direction of, or to perform a service function for public elementary schools or secondary schools in a city, county, township, school district, or other public subdivision. Basically, what that means is that it is an individual who can sit at the meetings and make decisions or financial decisions in terms of what's happening or what the team decides to do in a meeting. So what are the principal's primary responsibilities as the instruction leader, as the LEA? So you're responsible for the education of all the students. You need to be familiar with the concept of special education. You need to ensure that staff members know what is necessary for providing the services. To verify the staff members are appropriately implementing the services. You're going to lead the efforts for data collection and analysis. Principals also should ensure that all staff members are aware of the process for identifying students with disability. Needs to know all students in the building and be ready to talk about them. And of course, needs to know how to prevent discipline problems. A little bit about the history of special education. The main law governing special education is IDEA. It covers identification, placement, and services. Students with disabilities are entitled to an appropriate education. Students with disabilities are to be educated in the least restrictive environment. Not all students with disabilities are eligible for special education services under IDEA. That's where we have section 504, where we could provide accommodations and modifications. Section 508 governs accessibility of technology and online programs for students with disabilities. And then FERPA governs who can see the documents relating to a student. So who can serve as LEA? Anyone who is qualified to provide or supervise the provision of specially designed instruction, is knowledgeable about the general education curriculum, and is knowledgeable about the availability of resources in the public agency. So the role of the LEA is a team participant who is responsible for making decisions on behalf of the district. He or she ensures that the IEP meets compliance with state and federal regulations and is authorized to commit district resources. The signature of the LEA representative on the IEP ensures that the program and services specified on the document will be provided within the timeframes delineated in the IEP. The LEA must attend the IEP meeting in its entirety. If an LEA gets up and leaves a meeting, the meeting needs to stop until the LEA returns to the meeting. So what are some essential skills of an LEA? So you're going to take responsibility for the meeting, communicate effectively, be organized, be an active listener and contributor to the discussion, know your people, practice conflict resolution when needed, exercise time management, be ethical, be sensitive to the feelings of members, verify every member, and be impartial and objective. So as the LEA, if every member of the team that's required is not there, a meeting should not continue and you may stop that meeting. So what are your responsibilities? You're going to know the parts of an IEP, ensure the developers of an IEP have the necessary information, make sure they have enough time to get through the IEP in a meeting, ensure that parents or guardians are notified in a timely fashion and strongly encouraged to participate, ensure the IEP is implemented in a timely fashion, ensure the necessary services and support still needed in the IEP are provided, ensure that the IEP is evaluated at least annually. I'm going to talk a little bit about the IEP. So it formalizes the student's education. So it's an instructional tool. There's communication for how we're going to communicate the big picture, management, what are folks going to do, what are the services, accountability. So it's ensure of students' needs are being met, and of course, monitor and evaluation. So all the IEPs must be complete and thorough. And it also establishes that student track progress, tracking the progress monitoring and how they're doing. Who should attend? Parent or guardian. They're required participant, a student, one appropriate but must be invited at age 13, a general education teacher of the child, unless the child will not participate in the general education environment at all during the life of the IEP. This could be a related arts teacher, things like that, if they're self-contained and they don't have a general class that they push into. Special education teacher of the child, an LEA, anyone else that's knowledgeable, and other designated folks by the student's family. Sometimes in these meetings, we're going to talk a little bit about homebound or home-based. So home-based is an IEP team decision in response to the LRE considerations. Homebound is the medical decision from a licensed medical professional. Homebound must be approved by the district prior to holding a meeting. Home-based also for students with IEPs, please be sure to include the Director of Special Services in all of those meetings. But in both cases, the IEP team will determine the amount of services to be provided. That provider must meet state certification requirements to provide services in the area of disability and or general education. The IEP must reflect services and placement settings. Once a student is placed on homebound or home-based to receive special education services, these services must be in place within 10 school days. If services are unavailable to begin within 10 school days, the IEP team needs to reconvene to discuss other options. So talking a little bit about an AEA, or an additional educational assistance, otherwise known as one-on-ones. So requests for those will sometimes come from the parents or from the team. So if it's from a parent, we want to make sure we ask the parent what areas they believe the child is not making meaningful progress. How does he or she see that individual helping? We need to explain to the parents that an AA is not provided simply because it can potentially benefit a student, and it's only provided when it's necessary for the student to make meaningful progress for safety purposes or for medical purposes. Explain that the AA service decisions are based on data, and the team would like time to gather data and reconvene to discuss why AA might be required. A reevaluation would need to occur in order to consider this request, and there are procedures as shared on our special education support site in terms of documentation and everything that needs to be collected prior to a decision about an AEA. If the team is requesting or considering an AEA, conversation and reach out to the Director of Special Services should always occur prior to any meeting where this discussion takes place. So a little review about timelines. Initial evaluations must be completed within 60 calendar days of receiving parental consent. Initial eligibility determination must be completed within 15 days of the evaluation report being completed. The initial IEP must be completed within 30 days of the eligibility meeting. And then the annual review meeting must be reviewed at least annual. It's 1 year minus 1 day of the IEP meeting dates. And reevaluation, review, and eligibility determination must be conducted at least every 3 years. And eligibility determination is what restarts the timeline. Who needs to be at the reevaluation review meeting? School psychologists must be present at a meeting for a team to recommend formal testing as part of a comprehensive reevaluation. eligibility determination must be completed in order to restart the reevaluation review 3-year timeline. So before the meeting, everyone that participates in the meeting should have a good understanding of the individual's needs and some ideas of what the IEP should include. So we may have information from the evaluation meeting, review any previous IEPs, information taken and feedback from other relevant school members and staff, consider staffing and resources, scheduling the meeting, make sure that everybody gets their invitations and there's enough time, consider creating an agenda to keep the track moving, and then maybe even conduct some student observations or other areas as the LEA and just kind of note their academic and social behavior. So you can provide additional input at the meeting. During the meeting, the LEA should ensure that everyone in the room is introduced, describing the different roles, make sure procedural safeguards are given to the parent, encourage parental input and questions throughout the meeting. While the draft IEP is presented, stress that the draft is only a recommendation and can be revised and improved as needed. Encourage participant suggestions. Note that the evaluation of this plan will take place over the course of the year. And if anyone finds things that are not working as planned, another IEP meeting can be scheduled. If a team member's excusal is completed, the principal signs as well as a special education director designee. And then it would be sent to the director's special services to sign and to complete. Anybody that does not attend a meeting that was invited needs to complete that excusal form. After the IEP, the LEA wants to make sure that everything is signed. Talk with each teacher who's working to implement the IEP. You could do this monthly. Are we meeting everybody's needs? At least once every 9 weeks, it would be a good idea to meet with the special education teachers and determine if students with IEPs are making progress towards their goals and objectives. Ensure that progress reports are completed and provided to parents. If the student is not meeting the goals of the IEP or changes appear to be required, arrange for another meeting as soon as possible. So as the LEA, you want to be very involved as the instructional leader in terms of what's happening with our students with disabilities. What happens if the parents are in agreement? So some things to ask: have we considered all the suggestions? Ask questions to understand why the parent isn't in agreement. Consider why the parent is in agreement. Do they feel their child does not have a disability? Do they want their child to receive services in a setting other than the general ed classroom? Do they feel you're not providing the level of special education intervention they feel is necessary? If the disagreements are over major issues, it is the LEA who makes the final determination. Ensure that the parent receives a copy of the procedural safeguards along with the documents. And then contact the director of special education. Typically in these situations, if parents are in agreement, please make sure that a conversation occurs between you and the director of special education, so that individual may be available to attend the meeting as well to help with parents who are not in agreement. So some recommended documentation is a record of phone calls made or attempted when they are occurring, by whom, any results. You can keep the communication log, and the ed plan can be used. Copies of letters, notes, or emails. Record of visits to the student's home or parent's guardian place. Include descriptions of time who made the visit and results if we have to go that route in terms of making home visits. So some legal consequences for non-compliant clients. Principals who fail to take responsibility and exercise leadership to ensure that IEPs are followed can face serious consequences. Our grievance board have even upheld the removal of public principals for failure to comply with their IEP team responsibility. There's an example of a case study. So we want to make sure as the LEA that you are taking responsibility in your administrative leadership, ensure that your teachers are implementing the IEP. And obviously, as we do, we're going to work with the parents. But remember, ultimately, you are responsible that those IEPs are being followed within your buildings. Be proactive. So it's important that you provide leadership. So communicate regularly with your special ed teachers and parents. Be proactive instead of talking with teachers when problems arise. Get involved in tough cases early. Be preemptive in dealing with any knowledge deficits that may exist with the teachers and staff. Work with Director of Special Services for in-service or coordinating education for teachers who need additional training on the IEP process. Also make it clear to teachers or other staff that IEP regulations are important and must be followed. You must always take care to thoroughly understand and properly follow requirements of state policies. It's not only important to protect you from disciplinary action, but to ensure every special needs child receives appropriate services. Here's just a glimpse of the profile of a South Carolina graduate that of course includes our students with disabilities. Thanks for watching this webinar on LEA training. If you have any questions, please feel to reach out to the Director of Special Services. Have a great day.